Welcome to Communication Studies 5314, Professional Communication in Health Science and Technology. I'm Dr. Amy Kerber and I'll be your instructor this semester. I'm a professor here in Communication Studies and I'm also serving as the Associate Dean for Faculty Success and Inclusion, which basically means that I oversee tenure and promotion and annual faculty evaluation and all matters related to faculty in the college, essentially. So I'm a relative newcomer to this college. I transferred here in January 2017 from the English department, which is in the College of Arts and Sciences. However, I've been at Texas Tech quite a while, actually since 2002. And prior to that, I was in the PhD program at University of Minnesota. At that time, it was a PhD in Rhetoric and Scientific and Technical Communication. So, and a little bit of background on this course. If you've been around a while, you might remember that this course used to be titled Communication in Healthcare. It was basically a graduate course that focused strictly on health communication. And it had not been taught for a while because I didn't have anyone to teach it. And so when I came to this college, I took a look at the syllabus and decided to, or I proposed to the faculty that we revise both the syllabus and the title in the course description to take a more expansive focus on communication in health science and technology. And that's what you see reflected in the title and the syllabus that I've given you. And that was done for two reasons. I mean, partly in line with my own expertise, but also partly in line with what we perceived as student demand. That there was a demand by expanding to health science and technology, we would meet the needs of a wider variety of students across campus. So, and then one thing I really like about this course is I think it achieves a good mix of academic training and professional training. So you're going to see there's not any shortage of academic theory and research methods and the like, but at every step along the way, we also pay close attention to what does it mean to communicate successfully as a workplace professional in the STEM professions. And hopefully, I'm hoping the subject matter and the approaches are diverse enough that it can meet the needs of the wide variety of students that I know are enrolled in this class. But at the same time, that professional communication is the umbrella term that gives us the focus that makes the course content coherent. So let's move on and start looking at Unit 1. So as many of you already know, this course is one of the required courses in a brand new graduate certificate that we're offering here in the College of Media and Communication. As shown on the website here, which I'm going to go ahead and click on, this is a 12-hour certificate available fully online. The idea behind the certificate was to provide a way for working professionals, especially those in the STEM fields, to acquire skills in leadership communication. The TEDx talk that I've included as an assigned reading for this week is a great introduction to the vast amount of science that currently shows the value of communication skills in today's organizations. And I'm showing this certificate website at the beginning of class here because I want you all to know that the certificate is an option, and if you're not already enrolled in it, you can certainly contact me and follow up for more information on that. And I also know that some of you in the class are already enrolled in the certificate. But like I was saying when I was introducing the course, really, I've designed the course broadly enough that you can take it and gain value from it as a standalone course, whether or not you are enrolled in the certificate. So, as a prelude to everything we will discuss in this course, I would add that the value of effective professional communication goes far beyond an economic benefit to organizations, even though that's often what we focus on, and that's kind of what the TED Talk focuses on. Knowing how to communicate effectively makes you a better coworker, but it also makes you a better person, and better people make better organizations and ultimately a better world. So now let's turn to a more specific preview of the different topics and readings that we're covering in Unit 1, which is titled Communicating in Organizations. So now let's turn to a more specific preview of the different topics and readings we are covering in Unit 1, which is called Communicating in Organizations. Unit 1 encompasses the first 3 weeks in your syllabus. Week 1 in particular is a brief introduction to some of the different theories that are used to understand leadership today. So really this whole first week we are focusing on leadership communication, which I think is a really important subpart or subsection of the larger umbrella of professional communication. So, and you have 4 texts assigned for week 1, and these are meant to get you thinking about what is meant by effective leadership and what role communication plays in that. I'm showing on the left a simple definition of leadership. This is one of hundreds of leadership definitions that you can find pretty easily in a Google search. But this one comes from a website called The Balance, which is a website that gives tips for small businesses. I like how this definition emphasizes that leadership is an art. Even though we will be reading a lot of empirical research this semester, research that contributes to a science of leadership, at the end of the day, leadership really is more an art than a science. Also, I hope you enjoy the TEDx talk that's your first assigned reading as much as I did. It is a really inspiring introduction to thinking about the role that communication plays in effective leadership. And I think because of the speaker's focus on communication, she gives us a nice pathway toward thinking about some alternative understandings of leadership as well. In this slide, I'm providing you with an overview of all the different leadership theories that are presented in all of this week's readings. You'll have to consult the readings for deeper definitions, but I'm hoping you can use this slide as a kind of a cheat sheet. And by the way, I provide PDF copies of all of these lecture slides in Blackboard so that you can go back and access them later. Some of these you will hear about much more than others. Transformational leadership, for instance, is addressed in more than one of this week's readings. Some of the other theories in this table, although they are still important, seem to be less well established in the field of leadership studies. As you look at this slide, you might consider key differences among these theories. For instance, some emphasize individual traits that make someone an effective leader, whereas others emphasize group dynamics. Also, some of the theories lend themselves more to a talent-oriented approach to leadership, that is, conceiving leadership as a capacity or talent that some people are born with, whereas others lend themselves more to a training-oriented approach, that is, conceiving leadership as a skill that can be taught. So the article, moving into the reading specifically, the article by Mumford et al. Is largely a theoretical article that introduces some of the concepts and questions that are frequently addressed by scholars in leadership studies. I think the 4 meta models these authors introduce are nice shortcuts for the different characters we might use to think about effective leadership: teacher, politician, warrior, and problem solver. The authors contend that the 4th of these, leader as problem solver, has been neglected, and they use this article to address that gap that they perceive in the previous literature. The article's overall purpose, as addressed in the discussion section, is to break down the various knowledge and skills involved in leadership to help us understand more clearly how we might train people to be more effective leaders. Moving on to the second article, the Robledo et al. Article that was assigned for week 1. According to this article, leadership in STEM professions has been largely ignored until recently. The article starts by mentioning some possible reasons for that. Innovation was traditionally seen as the product of a lone individual genius working by himself to develop creative ideas, or herself. Other literature we will read this semester echoes similar ideas. In short, if we adopt this traditional model, the ideas emerge through a process that is surrounded by a lot of mysticism, but the ideas are ultimately seen as a product of individual genius or inspiration. We might make similar observations about invention or discovery in the context of science. In this way of thinking, leadership is not important because we are only talking about one individual and his or her creative genius. Another side of this story is that in all of the extensive research that has been conducted on leadership and leadership communication, these authors contend that scientists and engineers have been largely ignored. So this reinforces the tendency to focus on scientific and technical knowledge as a separate skill set, different from and independent from leadership skills. So these authors, Robledo et al., they begin by summarizing some of the traits that they believe make STEM professionals different from other kinds of employees. So these authors contend that STEM professionals tend to be more autonomous than other kinds of employees, that they tend to identify more with their profession than their organization, and that their work tends to be dynamic and project-based, which means that different kinds of leadership are demanded at different stages in the project. Please think, as you read this article, please think of these authors' claims as a starting place for discussion. Certainly nothing that is set in stone, and I would like to discuss, when we get into the discussion forums, how your own experiences relate to these authors' assertions. So now, looking ahead to week 2, the topic for week 2 will be emergence of leaders. And the general question we will address is, how do effective leaders come to be? Is leadership a natural talent, or is it a skill set that can be learned? I've assigned 3 readings for week 2 as indicated on this slide and in the syllabus. The Baxter article is one that I came across quite a while ago, and it has been influential in the design of this course because this is where I first came across the concept of discursive leadership. I've highlighted a key quotation from this article about language as a resource or strategy that I encourage you to keep in mind as you make your way through the other 2 readings assigned for week 2. Baxter uses the concept of discursive leadership to examine how leaders emerge in a team setting. Basically, discursive leadership means that we understand that people are effective leaders because of what they say. It is language that makes a leader. In this article, Baxter is interested specifically in how leaders use language and how this might differ based on gender. To avoid oversimplifying gender difference, she studies 3 different kinds of teams: men only, women only, and mixed gender. I don't want to give away the ending. You'll need to read for yourself to see what she discovered. But it is pretty interesting, and I appreciate how she avoids any oversimplistic generalizations about stereotypical male or female behavior. The Carton article is another one that I think offers a very interesting perspective on how leaders can motivate their teams to feel passionately about the goals they are pursuing. The author talks about the, quote, vision trap paradox, a situation in which the leader's vision feels so abstract that it causes employees to feel further alienated from the organization's mission and leader's vision. But then he suggests some of the tactics that effective leaders can use to overcome this paradox. Perhaps not surprisingly, many of these tactics involve communication. In other words, basically, he suggests an effective leader will use language to convey their vision to employees in a way that achieves a, quote, perception of proximity. In other words, effective leaders communicate in a way that makes faraway goals seem close and achievable. And I find it fascinating the way he traces through the details of the history of NASA in putting a man on the moon and uses this as an example to illustrate what he means by that concept. The Rotman, Sachs, and Reeves article begins by reporting an interesting observation from early in their study. When they first asked engineer participants what it means to be an effective leader, many of them resisted this notion altogether, suggesting that they did not want to identify themselves as leaders because that seemed incompatible with being a good engineer. The authors offer a couple of possible explanations, noting that traditional training of engineers has focused on technical problem solving, not people problem solving. And then they speculate echoing one of our readings from week 1, the article by Robledo et al., you'll recall, that traditional models of leadership don't fit engineering because the research that has produced these models has largely ignored the work of STEM professionals in organizations. In response to this initial dilemma, the authors offer 3 leadership orientations based on the synthesis of ideas communicated to them by the engineers who participated. So the technical master is one who has achieved a high level of technical problem-solving expertise, but also a great ability to mentor other engineers to pass on this knowledge. So that's their first leadership orientation. The second leadership orientation is the collaborative optimizer, and that is someone who knows how to make teamwork effective. And then the third leadership orientation is the organizational innovator, and this is someone who knows how to develop innovative ideas, but more importantly, they can persuade others to believe in their ideas and follow their vision. So some of you might be able to think of examples of people who possess these qualities in your own professional experience, whether this has anything to do with engineering or not. So now moving on to week 3, which addresses leadership communication in crisis and conflict. The overarching question addressed in the week 3 readings is, how do leaders respond to crisis and conflict? In these readings, we get a wide array of examples in which leadership communication played a role in determining the success or failure of an organization's response to a situation of crisis or conflict. The Di Benigno article is a great example of a workplace ethnography, helping prepare you for your first major writing assignment in this class. Obviously, you won't be doing this scale of work, and that's why I've called your assignment a mini ethnography. But this study is a great model nonetheless, as the basic goals this researcher has tried to accomplish are similar to what you're attempting in this assignment. One way to think about the work of an ethnographer is that you are trying to figure out the unspoken rules that exist in the community or cultural site that you are studying. To do this, as much as possible, you need to make yourself a stranger. Even if you are not truly a stranger in the site you're studying, try to put yourself in that position to do this research that's going to be required for the first brief report. We are much more accustomed to thinking of an ethnographer as someone who goes off and studies people in a different culture, and that's what I've tried to represent by the picture on this slide. But the same techniques can be very usefully employed to understand communication in the workplace, and that's really what you're doing in this first of the 3 brief report assignments. As an entry point into both of the readings for week 3, I'd like you to take a look at this recent report published by the Business Higher Education Forum that I'm going to open up right now. This report caught my attention several months ago when I was designing this class and the graduate certificate that this class is part of, because the report makes a really strong case for the reasons why it is so crucial that STEM professionals receive training in other disciplines that go beyond their narrow areas of disciplinary expertise. The specific emphasis is on industry demand for employees with data science and analytics skills. But when you read the report, you see that what is really needed is employees who are capable leaders because they possess skills in technical decision making. And I'm kind of scrolling through this, but again, you'll have access to the PDF, so you can take a look on your own time, which I would encourage you to do. So this means the demand is for employees who possess excellent scientific and technical expertise, so they know how to process data, but they can also go beyond just processing. They know how to make meaning, they know how to tell stories, and they know how to use the data to make well-informed decisions in collaboration with others. This skill set can only come about through interdisciplinary training. And unfortunately, the report notes, today's universities are moving in the opposite direction to more specialized, silo-focused training. Thus, the report authors instruct universities that we need to start creating hubs instead of silos. think this makes a nice backdrop to your week 3 readings and also this course in general. And I hope you will take a closer look at this report when you get a chance. The Fisher and Kingman article analyzes 2 disasters, the Challenger disaster that some of you might be old enough to remember, and the USS Vincennes. Explicit focus is on visible data quality problems in the systems that led to each of these disasters. To quote from the authors, it is believed that management, especially in a world so dependent upon information, should pursue an aggressive plan of treating information as a critical product. I think it's a really interesting exploration of how crucial is good quality data in the management of organizational crisis and conflict. So, and that brings us to the end of the Unit 1 lecture. I'm hoping that I provided you with just a preview of all the readings we're doing for these first 3 weeks that's going to help you as you make your way through these readings. Now, the reading load is pretty heavy in this class, and you're grad students, so I'm assuming you'll just take the initiative and do those readings. But one of the things that I've found about distance education is that the students who are most successful are the ones that don't have any problem reaching out to the instructor or classmates if they're having problems. And there's lots of different ways to do that. I mean, we're going to have a discussion forum every week. I've also got a discussion forum posted in Blackboard that I called the coffee shop, and that's where you can stop by and ask questions about anything at any time. And, one of the things, like I said, one of the things about distance education is the students who are the most successful are oftentimes the ones who ask the most questions. So I really encourage you to use all the channels of communication that are available to you. Do not hesitate to ask questions of your instructor, of your classmates, and don't hesitate to get in touch at any time if something is unclear. So I hope you enjoy these readings. You'll also see that Unit 1, I think it goes pretty quickly, and shortly after the first 3 weeks is when that first brief report is due, which is the mini workplace ethnography. So anyway, I'm really excited about getting started this semester, and I hope to hear from all of you soon.